thanks for the likes of Annie, Daniel and Tom and Trevor, Lord, that they're there to support us, to encourage us. And we just thank you for them in our lives today. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, everyone. Right. So, brief introduction. If you don't know me by now, I don't know how you've ended up on this call, but my name's Trevor Howard. I oversee, amongst many other things, I oversee the journey into military chaplaincy, and in some ways I'm involved in looking after our military chaplains. That was great as a role when it began in 2017, when there was one. There's now 7 full-time serving regular chaplains, and as you can see from this call, only 2 other people on this call are actually not chaplains. The rest of you are all on some journey towards that. So that's just so that you're aware of the growth that we're seeing in this area of ministry, military chaplaincy. You're all at different stages. Some of you are going to be very soon ordained, like Israel, who's masquerading as Stephanie. And others have already been ordained, others are already serving, and others haven't really started the process. Nana, great to see you. I know that you're just on that journey. Same with Olubenga, great to see you. Pastor Patrick, just in the journey. Victor, starting that journey, getting going in the first sort of year or so of things going on. Some a little bit further on. So I just want to give you an encouragement that you are all on a journey. And whilst everyone wants it to happen and be completely sorted and done within 2 years of their initial joining of CIC, it's not always going to work that way, and that's partly why I've put this meeting on, because a lot changed in the last few months. So I just want to put that out there. CIC first became Ascending Church, now called an endorsing authority, through the United Board in October 2016. I attended the AGM in January 2017 at Amport House in Andover, and we got our first chaplain was accepted in July 2017. So that's how long we've been going. Unfortunately, things aren't always a bed of roses, and that particular chaplain fell from grace. There isn't another way of putting it, and was put out of ministry early 2020. So there are standards, and they're constantly evolving and changing, and that's part of what we've got to look at tonight. So CIC has reached the fascinating situation where we now have the Royal Navy's first Black African Pentecostal chaplain, Newton Ndlovu. We have the British Army's first Black African Pentecostal chaplain, Henry Affle. But we also have other people who are serving in other ways and have other milestones. Daniel on the call is the British Army's youngest ever Army chaplain. And Tom Wild, who's on the call, is CIC's senior chaplain, and he can talk more to that, but he is our senior chaplain by dint of length of service as much as anything else. So there's the brief history. It was a long journey. It took us 4 years to become Ascending Church and endorsing authority, and things change a lot. And so I'm going to talk about what we're looking for, what the issues are, what it is you need to do, what the journey might look like, what the timescales are, and the complications and the variations that can happen within all of that. So before I do that, I would just like to do 2 things. I'd like to ask Daniel, because I know he's got to go quite quickly. Daniel, could you just give us like a minute or 2 of what your journey has been into Army chaplaincy, and maybe, if you're allowed to, something about where you've most recently been serving?
Yeah, no, I'll work backwards if that's all right. So up until last week, I was 15 miles off the Ukraine border as part of a NATO training exercise. It's amazing, and I say that to say it picks up quickly. As soon as you're in uniform, you go wherever's needed, so you really do have to hit the ground running. And why is that important? As you're looking at joining the department or exploring joining the department, make sure you don't shortchange yourself from a ministerial experience on the leading up to it, because the commanding officer, the unit welfare officer, the adjutant, the private soldiers that you're caring for want to know that you are a subject matter expert, as in whatever their problem or war, you're a man with some kind of plan in your back pocket. You know, I don't want to kind of blow my own trumpet, far from it, but I was kind of helping lead a little camp with 1,500 people, 15 miles off the Ukraine border, less than 6 months in post. It's quite a kind of hurdle for me first year to look to. Before then, I was a Christian chaplain at an immigration removal centre for the Home Office, and chaplaincy at the broadest level was never on my radar with my church background at all. I trained for conventional church ministry, as in you give me a church. At 18, all I ever wanted was a church to pastor and little family of my own. I was halfway there when I had a church to pastor, and then I got made redundant at the end of the COVID pandemic. And then I don't know, the way that these opportunities have just come about, I can only attribute down to the grace of God in my life. Trevor really held me hand through the process, and if anyone fought my corner the most during recruitment, it was definitely CIC. When I first expressed interest to the department, the Army were very warm and accommodating, but said, you've got potential, come back in 5 to 10 years. But with support from Trevor at CIC, and then further ministerial experience in state-funded faith-based work, we were able to kind of wiggle, circumnavigate that, or at least get before the United board. There's plenty of opportunity throughout the formal recruitment process to get time and experience on site. So I think the Royal Army Chaplains Department are now hosting a 2-week taster experience around September every year. There'll still be capacity to sign up for that later this year if you haven't done that. And then there'll be a 3-day officer familiarisation visit where you shadow a chaplain on site at a large garrison. We just had one last week at Catterick. It was nice to meet other potential people joining the department and just tease out those questions. So please don't shortchange the ministerial experience before you look. I'm the worst villain for trying to rush the process going. I can't imagine anyone was more knocking on the door more than me. Trevor could probably say more than that. But I'm really pleased I spent the time I did in the local church. And the process is naturally so long, but I just think that's to make sure that, I don't know, you really want it, rightly or wrongly. Yeah, thanks.
Superb. Thanks, Daniel. That's absolutely brilliant. Tom, if you can hear us and you can come in, could you just give us a couple of minutes on what your journey was like?
Yes. Is there anything specific about it? Because it was quite a long one, obviously, up till now. So,
well, you managed it in a minute in February, so January.
Yeah. That was actually me doing that, wasn't it? So, the incredibly long story short, my background is different to Daniel's in the fact that I had military experience beforehand as a soldier in the noughties. Sadly, I got injured quite badly, which eventually led me to come out, but with a plan all along to come back into the Army as a chaplain. With that, I then had to go on a bit of a journey, and similar to what Daniel's alluded to, there's a saying in the Army that say that no plan survives first contact. And so you can spend weeks and months, or in our cases, obviously years, discerning, et cetera, of how you think your journey is going to be and where that's going to take you and how it's going to lead you. But as soon as something comes up, or as soon as you start to put that into place, all manner of things can change what happened. So I'd got my degree from Durham, theology degree. Wasn't ministry school, just a straight out of degree. But whilst I was up there, I was involved in a church and started volunteering in a local prison with a chaplaincy team there, which then eventually led to me hear about CIC, who knew the churches I was a part of and knew the people I was a part of, so that was helpful. And from there, got my ministry accreditation, and then got ordained a little later on into a couple of years into my 5 years of prison chaplaincy. The prison chaplaincy thing for me was mega important. I was working with students, a bit of youth, but mostly students and student-age people in the church I was a part of in Durham, due to the nature of where I was, which was great and helped. It's probably helped me talk officer more than anything else. But the actual experience of learning how to be a chaplain versus how to be a pastor or a church, community-based church minister, really probably set me up for a lot of I'll say success. Yeah, again, it's very British. Yeah, it probably gave me a bit more of an advantage than perhaps some of my other colleagues who've only ever really done community-based ministry. However, that doesn't mean you have to have chaplaincy background, blah, blah, blah. You absolutely don't at all. Just for me personally, it was really helpful. Just the skills of being a chaplain versus the skills of being a pastor or a vicar or a priest, whatever. There's a lot of crossover, so don't worry at all about that. So whilst I was a prison chaplain, applied to come into the army, which was all good. It took a while. And I think for you guys on the call, the thing that I'd really emphasize on in terms of the lead up to becoming a chaplain was be patient, don't be in a rush, and absolutely it has to be for those with families, wives, partners, kids, husbands, whatever it might be, or even just parents and the rest of it, you have to bring them along on that journey. If you try and do it all on your own and then keep them separate, it won't work. It'll work for so long and then it'll fall apart. Even if you live in, which is going a bit into it, but married, unaccompanied, your family stay where you are and you travel around with the army, whatever service you look at, you still have to have that bedrock of going, okay, we decided that we were going to do this together. That led me on a journey where I had to take my hands off, and I say that figuratively, of course, of my wife, and allow her to get her own discernment as well, both separately and for us together. And actually it was down to the point where my wife said, after about several months, if not a year or so, of me letting her get to that point with the Lord and so on, was when she turned around and said, right, we're doing this or not. And that's when I knew it was time to go and get on with it. And when it gets hard, when you're away from your wife and your kids, when you're at a unit you might not having a great time with, or you're in a place you don't particularly want to get posted to, or whatever it might be, if you have that bedrock of you get into that decision as a family or as a unit or as a whatever your support network is, you have that as a bedrock to fall back on. It doesn't make it always easy, but it makes it bearable and it makes it important. So it makes the decision you made earlier on in the discernment process mega valuable and important. So that's what I'd say on terms of the entry point of it all. Be patient, do it together. Don't do it on your own. If you're on some kind of your own mission, that's great for you, but ain't going to look good on you in a couple of years' time when your family's disappearing and all the rest of it. And it does have a huge impact on you as a family. And that doesn't mean just those with wives and husbands and kids. It's those with mums and dads and all the rest of it. Someone who cares for you, especially the way the world's hotting up at the moment. And then also the other thing I would say is, I think sometimes people see the chaplains or see the army chaplaincy or whatever tri-service chaplaincy they're looking at, and it might look like it's a bit of a jolly, or there's get to do loads of fun stuff and it's all great, it's all easy, and it's a sort of congratulations, you've now received me, I'm here to help you sort of attitude. I've seen that, and having ran 2 or 3 OFVs, the things that Dan talked about for the visits, some people can come across in that way. And all I'll say on that one is don't get caught short by thinking it's easy. Don't get caught short by they thinking, congratulations, you've now got me. It's absolutely not the case at all. You absolutely need to put time and effort into your preparation to what you're doing, and whether that's reading, I don't mean reading like World War II books or anything, but just being aware of what military you're joining, what branch that you're joining, and having some kind of idea of what it is that you're getting into, and being humble in that process. Have the confidence, absolutely. Don't need to know everything. You don't need to be a military expert, not at all. But don't pay lip service to the fact of what it is you're joining, because actually, when you get to those units, you have an incredibly privileged, but also incredibly important role to play within those units. And I think CIC particularly, so far, stand fast what Trevor mentioned earlier, set an incredibly high standard for chaplaincy. And actually, what we're doing at the moment, if I'm being really honest, is we're probably showed a few people up because of that, and people want CIC chaplains to be their padres and don't like it when you have to leave their units. And that's I think that's credit to the process of CIC, but also those who they go to recruit. So that's my more than 1 minute waffle. Apologies, Trevor. But
that's absolutely brilliant.
I've got to highlight those things, because I think if you get all that sorted, now don't worry about all that as a one and now. We will help you through that process, Trevor, myself, and others in various different stages of that. But please don't try and just pay lip service to the stuff, and don't try and think you can just do it all by yourself, because you can't. And that's not a horrible thing. I'm doing that to help you, not to hinder you. Help me out, Trevor.
That's great. Tom, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. You might not. There's a lot of humility in people around CIC, which can be a bit strange for some of you from other cultures. If you do get in and you do get to meet Tom in person, you will be impressed at some of the stories that he can tell, and the places that he has served and the people that he's interacted with. So, Tom, thank you for that. Annie, if you can put the first slide up now, I'm gonna whiz through. Feel free to take notes. I'm going to go fairly fast through some stuff. There will be some nice slides to look at, but at the same time, I'm going to say quite a lot. So feel free to make as many notes as you can, and we will try and give you some steer on that. Annie, can you make that so that it's
I'm trying to it's because I'm doing it I'm doing it differently. Let's see. Yeah. Oh.
Annie,
yeah,
you're awesome, mate. You do a great job.
oh, thank you.
Yeah.
That's lovely. So I'm trying to this is just right. See, I was trying to
Just
do
wondered
something
if
very
you do
clever and it didn't
have
work.
you set it up in a window as the slideshow and then share that?
Yeah, no. It's there you go. There you go.
Brilliant. Can everyone see that nice and clearly? Superb, excellent. Right, so there is quite a journey, all right, that you're in the process on. I'm going to talk about a few bits. It's at the moment we are in a slightly challenging situation from a time point of view, in that at least two of our potential candidates failed at the very last hurdle, and you might think you get all the way through and how could they possibly fail me now, but there is a chance to fail at any point in the whole process, and they've been given a 12-month kickback. There are other chaplains who are currently serving with CRC have had a 6-month kickback following some form of interviewing or some aspect in the process. Some have been kicked back for a couple of years while medical issues get investigated. So don't be surprised if there's a kickback and time-wise, but basically we're looking on the whole, as a general rule, a minimum of 2 years from the point that you join CIC to the point at which you might be presented at United Board. United Board is the interview for you going into being a chaplain. That is a discernment process that's done with normally about a dozen other ministers gathered around, and it's quite an intimidating environment, and it's designed to be that. So we're not going to change that. There are 3 serving chaplains, 1 from each service who's there, and then there's about another 9 or so people who are from representative denominations, and it's a combined opinion of everyone in the room as to whether they think that you're actually cut out not just for chaplaincy but for military chaplaincy, and specifically the force that you're applying for, and they will only commend you to the next stage if the whole group is in agreement. So it's quite a deep sort of exercise. So if you get a knockback at that stage, you do need to take that one quite seriously, as to whether you're actually called to this ministry or not. We can tick a lot of boxes in the process leading up to that. You can have inspiring conversations with me in the lead up to it, but actually it's a discernment process that's not just done by me, but it's done by a whole group of people. I do the denominational stuff, but there is a big check. So what are they actually looking for, which I think is my next slide? They are looking for a professionally qualified officer, whether that's Royal Navy, Army or RAF. And for those of you who aren't in the situation, it's always in that order. The Royal Navy is the senior service, the Army is the biggest service, and the RAF are the Johnny-come-latelys. And we always tease the RAF because they stay in expensive hotels and don't really do a great deal. The Army always tease the Navy because all they're there is to get them to the fight, and the Navy tease everyone because, well, really they were there first. There's a whole sort of banter that goes on, and you just need to be able to cope with military banter. So if you're not used to military banter, go to a military town and spend a night in a pub and observe what goes on. You've got to immerse yourself in the environment to be able to work it all out. But professionally qualified officer, they're looking for 5 key things that I'm going to mention. The first 2 I'm going to mention. Yeah, you were almost there. Calling and competence. That's Newton, by the way, the first Royal Navy chaplain through us. He had to learn to swim in order to get in. So some people can't always swim. It's not a natural part of cultures. He had to learn that as an adult. And yeah, as his wife said, our surname is Ndlovu. It means elephant, not fish. Why did you get me to be married to a fish? But they still made him, when he crossed the equator for the first time on a ship, they do make him do the jumping in as he passed the equator, and there's video of him doing that, and we celebrated that not too long ago at his 25th wedding anniversary. So, but calling, you have got to be called of God. Without the calling of God being attested not just within yourself but by others, you are not going to survive. So number one, you've got to have a very clear calling. It can't just be, well, I've done this bit of chaplaincy and I've done that bit of ministry and my dad was in this service and I think I'd do a good job, and they've got a shortage, I must be the right person. Just because you tick boxes isn't enough. It's got to be a deep calling. If it's not a deep calling, wait until you've got a deep calling, because you won't survive without it. Core quality number 2, competence. You've got to be able to have evidence and prove your competence. And we'll talk a lot about what that's all about, but you have to be a genuinely competent minister, and that's got to be able to be backed up by evidence. Other people are attesting to you, documentary evidence, how you tell your story, and how others tell the story about you. You've got to be provably competent. Next one. You've got to have qualifications. I don't know if you can see the black guy in the middle there is Henry Affle, passing out at Sandhurst. You've got to have the qualifications. He's actually got a doctorate. So he's actually a reverend doctor, one of the few in CIC. But you don't have to be qualified to that level, but you do have to be qualified to be a professionally qualified officer, which means you can't just be qualified in astrophysics and think you're going to be a good chaplain. You actually have to be qualified in the area that you're meant to be an expert to the military in. So you've got to be able to have proven and recognized and recognizable qualifications. If all your qualifications are gained overseas, they're not necessarily going to like that. You're going to have to do something about that in the UK. So I'm just going to mention that. There are issues around that for some people at the table. So you've got to have your qualification up at the right kind of level. Experience. You've got to have a proven track record in ministry. If you can't prove your track record in ministry, you've got to go out and get it. They're going to look for things like, have you taken baptisms, weddings, funerals, Sunday services? Have you done the normal, regular things that are reasonably expected of a pastor? That's the main measure that they have of whether this is someone who is competent in Christian ministry. That's what the denominations look at. So you've got to have all of that, as well as all the interpersonal pastoral skills and all the rest of it. You've got to have a proven amount of experience. And number 5, expertise. You've got to be a genuine expert. They're looking for people who are already completely, what was that phrase that Boris used to use? Oven ready for Brexit. Okay, now you don't want to be Boris's level of oven ready. You've actually got to be oven ready. That they are expecting you to hit the ground running. And just as Daniel said, within 6 months of arriving on unit, he was 15 miles from the Ukrainian border. You've just got to understand that they really don't expect you to come in with things still to learn. There's much that you can learn, but you've got to arrive ready to hit the ground running. Okay, talking about being an officer, Daniel, look at yourself there. How you? What was going on with that beret? Eh? Never mind.
The beret, the shoes, the list goes on. That was day one. Yeah. I should have now, but at the time I looked the part. Yeah.
Superb. So here are some things that you might like to consider. How is your physical comportment? How do you actually carry yourself? Do you carry yourself in the way that other people would look at and go, that's a natural leader? Or do you carry yourself in a way that is just not a natural leader? I'm not talking about being arrogant, but you've got to come across as someone that people are ready to follow. How about your spoken manner? It's great that you might feel that you're called to the privates and the able seafarers and the lower level workers in the RAF, but actually you're an officer and you're expected to fit into automatically an officer's mess, and you're meant to be able to speak officer, as Tom put it. And if you don't know how to speak officer, then start mixing with a whole load of people who have got private school backgrounds, university graduates, and who know how to operate in that kind of environment. It is an elitist appointment. Whether you like that or not is almost neither here nor there. You're either up at that standard or not. But it's a very hidden thing. Dress codes. When they send you instructions, follow the instructions. If you turn up thinking that you look smart according to your normal culture and environment, but you're not wearing the suit and tie and smart shoes and socks that are expected of someone in an officer's mess, that's going to be noticed. They're going to know whether you fit or not. These hidden cultural signals are going to be there all the time. So do try and make sure you follow all the instructions that are given to you. You've got to come across as someone who is both a leader and relatable. And if you're not sure whether you relate across a wide variety of society, start interacting across a wide variety of society. If you're white and you've never interacted with black people, start finding black people to interact with. If you're black and you've never really interacted with white people, start interacting with white people. Find where they are, go and be there. Observe, learn, interact, grow. You've got to be relatable. You've also got to be very teachable. You've got to have a teachable personality about you. If you think you know it, trust me, I'm sure that Daniel would say the first week of Sandhurst probably knocked out any sense in which he knew everything, because there's a whole new learning curve that goes on when you become an officer as they're teaching you how to be in the military. You've got to have a teachable, you can't think that you know it all. I put this one in, a committed patriotism. At the end of the day, you're joining His Majesty's Armed Forces and you will pledge allegiance. Okay, I know that's a very American phrase, but it is there. You are expected to be someone who holds the King's commission with a loyalty to the crown. And if you're not a royalist in any way, shape or form, you probably aren't going to get through. Because actually this is a monarchical constitution that we serve in. So you've got to have a certain level of committed patriotism. Again, it's got to be demonstrable. An unselfish courage. You really, really have to realize that you are not in charge. You are the servant of the people who are there. You might hold an officer rank, but you've got to have a level of unselfishness that's committed to the care of others. And you've got to have a level of courage that's expected of the combatants who might earn medals, but you've got to do it with zero expectation on that kind of recognition. So I'm just going to mention those few bits, a humility, but with some strength. So I just really want to encourage you with, these are the sorts of qualities that people are looking for. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, there's just no way I can do that, hang in there. Both Tom and Daniel talked about being patient with the process, it taking longer than you might expect. You've got to reach the standards, be prepared to be working on yourself during that process. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So the good news is most of you have joined CIC. Well done. What can you do during year one of joining CIC? So here are a few things that you have to make sure you've got all the key elements of demonstrable ministry in place. Safeguarding training. Have you done it? Is it up to date? Have you covered both children and adults? It's just an obvious thing. Have you got your DBS check? Do you meet the criteria? Have you got a security clearance situation in place? Would it be a challenge for you to get security clearance? You have to take some responsibility as to what these things are for you. Can you show your pastoral skills? Have you got some evidence about that? Perhaps start writing a portfolio, keeping a portfolio of the services that you've led, that you've preached at, baptisms, funerals, weddings, that if you've not taken them, have been a minister that assisted at them. Daniel, if you need to go, feel free.
I will in a minute, but just to say, making a list of weddings, baptisms, funerals, and preaching was a good discipline, but that was a real game changer for me getting past the United board.
Yeah.
And it was good to highlight the type of funerals that I've done. We noticed going through the process that I'd pretty much only buried or cremated people that went to the church I was at. I'm not a local Anglican minister where anyone within the parish might phone and ask me to do a less faith-based or less overtly Christian, born-again evangelical funeral. And it was nice to try and find a further breadth of engagement, as it were. But just to echo what Trevor was saying, yeah, thank you.
Superb. Thanks, Daniel. I know you've got to go, so if you need to, just feel free to hive off. Great to have you on the call. So keeping that portfolio in place, keeping it updated, making sure you're going to be asked a lot of things about your general pastoral skills. Again, the same thing with your church and Christian leadership. You've got to have some evidence about what you've done, why you've done it, how you did it, what your reasons for doing it was. Why do you operate the way you do? What are your rationales for your models of ministry, your models of being a Christian leader? They're going to want you to have reflected on that, to thought it through and taken it forward. So they're going to interrogate that, because they want people who have actually got some understanding and a genuinely both academic and spiritual capacity to reflect on your own practice. Ecumenical and interfaith work is something that people from independent churches are traditionally not particularly strong on. However, it is an absolute requirement that you have ecumenical and some form of interfaith work that you can demonstrate. So if you have no interaction with other faiths other than to badger them with the gospel, you need to change that, because you're going to be expected to operate in a multi-faith chaplaincy environment, in a multi-denominational chaplaincy environment where you are expected to have respect for all. So think about how you're going to demonstrate having interfaith work and ecumenical work. Are you part of the local churches together groups? Are you part of a ministers fraternal that draws people together from across churches? What's happening as far as the other faiths? Can you show some compassion towards other faiths when faith groups are under particular attack? Think about what's happening with Israel-Palestine at the moment, and there's both Muslim and Jewish communities that are feeling a high level of attack from all sorts of areas at the moment. Can you show them some kind of support and compassion? Could you stand alongside them in anything? You know, just because you stand alongside them in one thing doesn't mean you stand alongside them in everything, but can you show some level, and can you keep a record of that? Just some thoughts. Qualifications, I mentioned that earlier. You've got to have at least a degree. It's a degree level appointment to be an officer, but that is just a tick box. That's the minimum before they'll even have a conversation with you. Have you got qualifications that mean that you can demonstrate a high level of theological and spiritual excellence and capacity? They're looking for subject matter experts. What about your calling? How are you going to actually demonstrate your calling? Just how do you tell your story? Can you tell it succinctly? Can you show it? Can you actually say and demonstrate in a way that's, how has God called me? Not just, yes, I'm called of God. That tells me nothing. Anyone that's going to come through the door of a United board is going to be saying, I am called. The question is going to be asked, how has God called you? What's that journey been? Can you point to the key bits where God spoke into your life and guided you and nurtured you and showed you the path that he wants you to go on? During your first year, you could also start approaching referees, people that would actually be maybe mentors to you or have been mentors to you, who can actually talk about the spiritual disciplines that you have in life, the way you carry yourself, people who carry perhaps a certain level of status in the local community, whether they're fellow pastors, leaders within your church or your ministry, other leaders that know you. You've got to build that up in some way. Personal finances. You need to get your personal finances in order. The military will not take people on into a King's Commission who have high levels of debt and are potentially vulnerable to being bribed. Okay, so it's just a fairly obvious sort of situation. You've got to be someone who's in charge of, and you've got to show that you are, as far as you best can, genuinely solvent. If you have got debt, that's not a problem. Everyone has debt, whether it's a mortgage or some credit cards or whatever. You've got to prove that you're in charge of that and you're in control of it. You don't want it to be out of control. Fitness and mental health. I put these two together. You've got to be military fit. So if you're applying for the Royal Navy, you need to go onto the Royal Navy officer application website. You've got to look at their requirements on physical fitness, and you need to be able to meet those requirements in relative ease. They are just the minimum entry requirements. This just to make sure that you're not so either overweight or unfit that when they put you through the tests, you're going to have a heart attack on their watch. They don't want that. They want you to be already. But the tests are going to be harder than that. They're looking for people who are already militarily fit and healthy and strong and able to do things. And it's not just about physical, it's also about your mental health. Think about, what do you do to preserve your mental health? What is your self-care? How do you create space in ministry? Have you got a discipline of going on retreats? Have you got people that you can talk to about issues that might be challenging to you? If someone very close to you passed, how would you deal with that in conjunction with you? How would you look after your mental health? You need to be aware of that, not just from your own point of view, but you've also got to be able to help others. There are a lot of people in the military at the moment who are going through a lot of mental health challenges, and you've got to be someone who can help them through a mental health journey, potentially in conjunction with other agencies and so on. You need to be able to signpost where necessary. You'll not be expected to be much more than a first aid person, but you've got to have some expertise on it. And if you've done no training on mental health stuff, go and do a day course on mental health first aid somewhere. There's all sorts of organizations that do it, but become conversant with the issues. There are a whole load of key websites, and I'm not sure whether Annie's able to put any of these up. We'll certainly make sure they're there, but you need to make sure you have looked at a number of websites, and I'm just going to list a few of them out. If you've not yet looked at the United Board website and read it, you need to go to the United Board website and read it, because they're the portal that's actually going to take you in. Another one, the Royal Navy Chaplains Department. Look at that website. Another one, the Royal Army Chaplains Department. Look at the website. Royal Air Force Chaplains Department. Look at its website. So there's a few bits going up in the chat that I think Annie's going to put in. I've also given Annie some links. I don't know if they're going to come up in the chat. Be good if they can, for the Royal Navy, the Arm and the RAF, in terms of where you can find the officer entry requirements around physical health. So they should be there. A couple of other websites that I've found that are quite useful. Paul Gallucci, who's on the call, has a background with the Methodists, and the Methodist Forces Board website is really good, gives a really good set of explanations about what life is like in the Army, in the Navy, in the RAF as a chaplain. There's some good interviews with people who have been in there and served and all sorts of stuff there. So well worth looking at the Methodist Forces Board website. And the Baptist Union also has quite a good armed forces chaplaincy website. But it's your responsibility to have looked at these, learn them, understand what the forces themselves are looking for, what the United Board is looking for, and what other sending churches are recommending are the key qualities, because the key qualities will apply across certain aspects, like how to be an Anglican minister or how to be a Methodist minister. That they're different, but the core qualities of chaplaincy are all there on those websites. So do know what is being said on those places, be able to reflect on them. Think about how you might talk about them in your own words, how you can reflect some of those things in your journey. Can you identify with certain bits? Are there bits that these places mention that you go, oh, I've got gaps there? Excellent. Fill the gaps. Do something about. If you've not got funeral expertise, go to funeral directors, offer to take some basic funerals. You should be able to do that. Baptisms and weddings, go to people who are churches that are doing those things and say, I'm learning them certain aspects of the ministry that my tradition doesn't get easily. Can I shadow you? Build those relationships, show an expertise, keep a record of it. It will be impressive if you do that. There really isn't an excuse for not getting the experience. You are responsible for it as an independent minister. So that's a whole load of stuff on the key websites. Spiritual health. This is probably the next biggest thing that comes up. You have to remember that you will be on your own as a chaplain a lot. And if you can't sustain yourself away from your family, away from the church that you attend, how on earth do you think you're going to be of use to the people who have no faith? You've got to be someone whose faith is constantly in and self-sufficiently enabled and supported. So if you've not got a Bible reading program, get one going. Lectio 365, Every Day with Jesus. There's loads of Bible reading programs on apps and stuff that's out there. Have an ordered prayer life. Put a pattern to it. Find something that's actually going to go right. On Mondays, I pray for this. Tuesdays, I do this. Wednesdays, I do that. Have a structure to it. Even if it needs to be like each month, I break my 30 days down into these different bits, and this is how I pray. But have a way of doing it. Be able to talk about how you do worship, and then you and then you ask the Spirit to speak to you, and then you read the Bible and you pray. Have a way of talking about your disciplines that are something that others will be able to relate to. Finally, think about your personal support system. Who's there for you? In CIC, we ask you to make sure you've got like 3 to 6 go-to people who are your key supporters when you set up your ministry. Keep them up to date with what you're doing. They're your key supporters. They probably should be your key intercessors. They should know what you're doing, what your stage is, where you're going, how you're doing. And if you're struggling, you should be able to sell them, and you should be able to get some support from them. You've got to have a system and a group of people in place. If you've not got that, start working on it. Some of you might like to look at having a spiritual director. You need to have stuff that's beyond the family. You can't just rely on your spouse. Sometimes your spouse will not deploy with you. Even if you go married accompanied, you're going to be deployed away from the base that they're housed on, and you could be on the other side of the world, and that could be for several months at a time. And sometimes you will be in a no PEDS environment. If you don't know what a PED is, that's a personal electronic device, and you might not be able to communicate with the outside world. How are you going to sustain yourself? Finally, on this area, I'm going to talk about your personal biblical and moral code. You've got to be clear about what your ethics are and why you have them and how you implement them. Have a deep look, for example, at things like porn. How do you manage that in your life? The stats are that half the ministers on this call have some kind of porn usage on a weekly basis going on. That's just the national stats. It might not be true of you, but that's just national stats. Okay, roughly speaking, half of all male ministers have some kind of problem with porn. It should be at 0, but it's so easy to access. How are you dealing with it? How are you accountable for it? How are you going to handle it? Similarly, things like debt, gambling, alcohol and drug use. Just if you're taking any kinds of non-prescription drugs, recreational drugs, I think they're sometimes called, that's a no-no. It'll come up in your medical tests and you won't be able to progress. The armed forces are a zero tolerance environment, and alcohol, although a lot of people drink a lot of alcohol, as a chaplain, you're not expected to get drunk with the squaddies. You are meant to be someone who can control their drink consumption, 1 or 2 pints at most of a night, and then call it quits, and the padre should leave them while they go on, and you're there to pick up all the mess later on the next day. But just be aware of what your role is meant to be. Be careful about extramarital attractions. They are attention from friends. There's all sorts of things that the devil will use to try and trip people up who have got genuine callings. We've got to be self-disciplined. Look after your holiness. I'm going to say that. Dress codes. Oh my goodness. Right. I have got 12 minutes. Follow the dress codes. They are complex. There will be dress codes for interviews. There will be dress codes for the officers' mess. There will be dress codes for training. There will be dress codes for church services. There will be dress codes for generally while in service. It is complex. It is constantly changing, and yet they like to think that it isn't. And as free churches, we like to think that the rules don't apply to us. They do, on the whole, apply to us, and you can win a lot and lose a lot just by how you dress. Standard officer dress for a man: blazer, collared shirt with a tie, trousers, not jeans, strong shoes, sort of black leather, brown leather shoes, a belt and socks. I know many people from African backgrounds often don't wear socks with their shoes. That's considered inappropriate in an officer's mess. Sorry, but it just is. So think about how you're going to come across. If you've only got one suit and one jacket, that's fine, but you're going to have to learn how to pair it with several different colored trousers, shoes, shirts, and so on to make it look like you're not like a one type of clothing person all the time. But officers' mess clothes are exactly that. They're necessary. I'm gonna move on quite quickly. After 1 year, you have to have completed your annual review with CIC. This is just the journey in. You have to have completed an annual review. You have to apply for and complete the ordination process or the recognition of your previous ordination, which is where Paul is at the moment. We're in that process of recognizing his ordination. Then you can apply directly to the Royal Navy, the Army, or the RAF. You shouldn't really apply in your first year unless you've been given an exemption. You will attend an officer familiarization visit. You might want to go to more than one. You might want to look at an RAF base as well as an Army base. You might want to look at a Navy unit as well as an Army unit. You've got to get an understanding of the discernment process. And there are all sorts of opportunities that your recruiter will be able to make known to you as you begin the process with them. Here's a few tough questions for you to ask yourself. How will you or they cope with you being apart for a long time? How are you going to cope with it? What about death in service? It's real. Everyone that you serve is a trained killer. Some of them don't always aim straight, even if they are trained. Okay, we will always make a joke about the Americans on this one, but there have been many chaplains who have lost their lives or been seriously injured because of friendly fire. How are you going to cope with that? Are you willing to lay your life down? You will be in the front lines. 6 months into first service, Daniel, 15 miles from the Ukrainian border. Just putting it out there. You will get into the hot places straight away. How will your family and friends cope with that reality? Do you need to bring them along on the journey, as Tom was talking about? Who will support them if something happens to you? There are deaths in training. Okay, there hasn't been a chaplain that's died in training for a very long time, but they do happen. And I just want to say, you need to be aware of having had these conversations with family. You can't just bury your head in the sand and think it's not going to happen to me. That's a great faith confession. Plan for the best, prepare for the worst. Just going to put that one out there. Okay, let's go to the next slide. As you approach your 2 years in CIC, or after you've been in CIC for 2 years, you'll need to have had conversations with the convener of the United Board. At the moment, that's the Reverend Cole Maynard. He will want to have a conversation with you before you go to United Board. He's going to do a basic pre-interview with you. And if he's not satisfied that you're ready, you won't go. End of. Okay, it doesn't mean that you won't ever go. It just means that you're not ready yet. So I might say, this person's ready. You've had a conversation. We've done your annual review. We've had a conversation. And I say, it'd be great for you to have a conversation with Cole. Cole has a conversation with you, and he'll just call me up afterwards and say, what on earth were you thinking, Trevor? Okay. Or he'll say, great candidate. How can we get them in? But it's a 2 year journey. Okay. Then These are all the points at which you could now fail. Okay, so you need to prepare for them so that you don't fail. The United Board, the medicals, officer selection board, officer training. We actually had someone last year who failed officer training. Okay, got all the way through, did everything, and still failed to pass out. Had to be put back to unit. 6 months later, had to go back to learn how to be an officer and redo the whole of Sandhurst. But just it is possible, and then you get posted to unit. Okay, so it varies according to the situation. Once you've done United Board, which can seem to take 2 years and be a very long and frustrating journey, suddenly the medicals, officer selection, officer training, and posted to unit can all be done within 6 months. It can suddenly happen. Okay, the hurry up and wait is a big thing. I can't remember if I've got anything else on there. I've got another slide, Annie. Just this, throughout the process, stay in touch with me, please, on any and all developments. Buzz me a WhatsApp, send me an email. I need to know what's going on with you, just so that I'm aware. Because if you go and have a conversation with a recruiter and then the recruiter says something about you to, say, Cole Maynard at the United Board, and I don't know what's going on, I look stupid, and I don't need to be doing that. Be true to yourself at all times. You have to operate according to your own tradition. You're required to operate according to your own tradition, but with respect for the military traditions. It is complex. It is not linear. Okay, there's lots of stuff you're going to have to learn. Stuff's going to come at you from a lot of angles, and it's not just going to go in a straight line. A coach once said to my son as he was learning to be a tennis player, most people think that you're going to start here and you're gradually going to plot a straight line graph all the way up to here when you suddenly pop out the end as a professional tennis player. He said, in reality, you don't do a line like this. You start here and you do this. You might go backwards, you might go up, you might go down, you might spin around a bit. You may eventually pop out as a fully fledged chaplain, but we don't know. There's a complex journey to go on, and it's different for everyone. It is subject to a whole heap of personal opinions along the journey. Personal opinions at United Board will come in. My personal opinion will come in. Personal opinions at Army Officer, Admiralty interview, and aircrew selection will come in. They will make personal value judgments, and that's difficult. You can retake. The majority of pushbacks are normally that you're not ready yet. Okay, so if someone says to you, we can't accept you in an interview at the moment, you've got to be patient and go, okay, I've got to go away and work on some stuff. 6 and 12-month knockbacks are normal. Okay, it's unusual to just sail all the way through. We've got a few people who have, but it's unusual. Okay, so I just want to let you know that. And the chaplains that have made it through, all in that WhatsApp group that we've got, and if you're not part of that WhatsApp group, buzz me an email at the end. Annie, if you can put my email into the chat, that would be great. If you're not in direct contact with me by email and you're not yet in our WhatsApp group and you're interested in this whole journey, please do that, because there are chaplains in that group who I can put you in touch with and you can do it. So a few key resources that I just want to mention. Some films that I think think about these questions. What would I do as a chaplain in any of these situations? What were or might be the challenges facing a chaplain? Do my friends and family see me as a chaplain in these contexts? Can they see me operating this way? As a chaplain, what prejudices or challenges might I face? Hacksaw Ridge, if you've not seen it, well worth the look. It's not a kid's film, but you might want to have a look at it and go, if I was a chaplain, how would I be in that forward-facing unit? The 6888, which is all about women in the Second World War, American Women's Unit. There's race, there's gender prejudice. How would you as a chaplain operate better than the chaplain who's portrayed in that particular film? Military Wives. You're all male on this call apart from Annie, but your spouses will struggle if they've not had an opportunity to think about what would be their role as a military wife, and that might give them an opportunity to think through what are they going to do. Pray about it, ask key questions. There's a couple of series: Warship, Life at Sea, and Soldiers Behind Bars, documentaries that are on Channel 5, well worth having a look at. You can get them on the catch-up processes. Think about how would you be a chaplain in those environments. Okay, what are the issues that you're facing? And I raised the question yesterday at the United board meeting that I was at, and said, what would be the one film, series, documentary, whatever that you would suggest that a chaplain should watch and understand before coming? And the immediate response was MASH. Father Mulcahy was his name. Watch MASH. Think about how you would be a chaplain in a field hospital. What an amazing reflection of how would you bring Jesus into that situation? How would you minister to those people? What are the challenges with speaking truth to the chain of command and pastoring the chain of command? How do you pastor people who are senior to you? How do you pastor people who are junior to you? There are issues to be faced. Think it through, reflect on it, write a paper on it, even if it's just for yourself. Work out how you reflect best. If it's all just up in your head, nah, it's not going to go anywhere. But if you've actually done something about it, then that would be great. Okay, we have a minute or two. I'm happy to stay on the call for a bit longer. I'd put aside in my head until past. Questions? Tom got in there first.
Just what I'd say is that's 35-40 minutes of a lot of information, and has to be that way because it's obviously it's a time frame and all the rest of it.
Yep.
Trevor's done a great and amazing job at fitting all that into that short time, to be honest with you. But just don't be too worried about the amount of information and the amount of process and the amount of things like about what to wear and how to conduct yourself, all those things. You will get that as you go along in the process. Trevor, myself, other chaplains will help you with that process. So don't be scared about the amount of things that the amount of information, the amount of stuff that you've just heard. If you don't know what that looks like already, that's totally fine. You will pick that up as you go along. We will help you with that. Some of the stuff you already know how to do. It's just putting it into a military context instead of a civilian context. All those sorts of things. Ultimately, they're looking for someone who's going to help the soldiers and the officers. And most of you, if not all of you, will have that already in you. It's just now remashing that, pardon the pun, into a military way of doing it. So don't be scared of the amount of information you received. Don't be put off by the amount of information you received. Know that we're there to support you, and ultimately, just make sure it's a calling on your life more than anything else.
Yeah, I think the other thing I just want to mention, that's really good, Tom. Thank you. Is that there's some new requirements that are coming in. There's an expectation that you have a good understanding of the basic geopolitical, economic, and other pressures that are on the armed forces and on the deployment of armed forces. So thinking about what you can find in open source documents. Listening to the Today program on Radio 4, they get a lot of information there. Reading some of the broadsheets, think about getting a balance, not just sort of like the Times and the Telegraph that are right wing, but also look at the Guardian and the Independent and some of the reflective articles that are often put in there by generals and commanders from all over on issues. Make sure you're following where things are at on, I don't know, housing in the military, budgets in the military. Where do you stand on the debate between and having a way that you can speak on things like we're diverting a whole load of the welfare budget for the poorest in our community to fund the military. How do you, as someone who's looking to go into that, but as a pastor who probably deals with some of the poorest people who need all of that, but look like you're going to be employed by the military machine and benefit from the change of money, how do you square that circle? How do you conceptualize it? How do you exist within that matrix? Why are we based in Romania? What are we doing there? Why are we doing it? How are we doing it? Subscribe to Defence Forces News or Navy News or Army papers or the RAF Gazette or whatever they're called. You just need to be aware of the global situations and the challenges that are going. Yes, I agree, Paul. That's very true. The Week magazine is very good. You have to subscribe to it, but it's a very good place to get those kind of things. They're expecting officers to be aware of political and global issues so that you can have deep conversations with highly competent other officers and speak well to the chain of command on the moral issues that they might be facing whilst under political and other pressure. A lot to take in, I know. Any questions from anyone? Or have I completely blown you all out the water? Please go ahead. Unmute and speak. Yeah, go ahead, Israel.
Having an understanding about political situations, is there anything against being a member of a political party?
It's never come up before. Paul or Tom, have you ever come across, as you're both sort of serving?
Yeah, I'd have to double check, but I'm pretty sure you can't be a member of a political party. Obviously, no one's saying you can't have a political view. That will be. Let me check. I'm sure I've seen that somewhere. You can't be a part of a political party. As a member. Yeah,
I don't think you're able to be a part of a political party in as much as prescribed, because you're then taking, I suppose you're influenced by that party, whereas you have to maintain a sense of neutrality. You might have your own opinions and you might support a particular political cause, but formally, I think it's. I don't think you're permitted, but you can talk with people if there's a particular political cause which is something that you're close to, or you want to become a member of Labour or Conservatives. You can explore that one during your training, but I don't think you can remain part of that party.
So I think ultimately you're there to serve the Crown, and the government's there to serve the Crown. You're not there to serve a political party, so it's to do with that, and you can't be influenced. You can't seem to be influenced by one party over the other, because then you might be willing to do things for one that not the other. Whereas the Crown is. It's relatively arbitrary in the fact of we know that the King doesn't make those decisions, but ultimately that's what's on your commission. That's who you swear an oath of allegiance to. So I think I'm relatively certain you can't be. Yeah,
that's good to know. I'm a long-term member of the Conservative Party, but I'm happy to hit that in the head and resign for the sake of military chaplaincy.
Yeah, I think you'd probably have to.
Okay, good to know. Thank you,
Victor.
Oh, sorry, it's still on his question. I think I read somewhere the army are non-partisan. I think so. Yeah, so it doesn't work like for him. Yeah.
I think it's exactly what both Tom and Paul were saying, that effectively the commission is to the Crown, to the King. As we are at the moment, and your loyalty is to the Crown and the defence of the realm. That's the bottom line. It's not a political appointment, and it has to be outside of, because governments change, and you serve the King, not the party that happens to be in power, who might ultimately, as a political thing, order you into a combat situation or make the decision to deploy troops to that environment as part of their political powers. But ultimately, it is for and with the service of the King in mind. Any other questions?
I can just clarify on that one. I believe just again, you can be a member of a political party, but you're required to abide by standards and values of all respective.
You look at the exact same thing I'm reading now, Paul. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which was news to me, because certainly you couldn't beforehand.
No, same. So yeah.
That's from Parliament there. So
if I'm being honest, there's obviously we can't tell people what to do. I would suspect it'll come up as a question, or it might get brought up about those things. Yeah, I don't know if it'd be easier not to be or not. I don't know. I could never say that.
It would potentially just be easier to resign rather than trying to fight a corner that's not really worth fighting at the moment.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for example, I was with a senior chaplain the other day who was a councillor for the Conservatives before he joined. Isn't now, definitely. In fact, he's probably gone right the other way. But he's no longer a part of anything. But he had been in the past, so it's certainly before the military. That is, by the way. It's not necessarily looked on badly that you have been or you are. I think it's probably just easier. That's what I think. That's all.
I think a lot of people would see it as community engagement and being people who are proactive. Most people are party members because they've decided to be, and it's part of an active thing, rather than, oh, my dad was, so I am. I think it's a bit more deliberate, and people would respect that. That's particularly if you've been involved as an activist or you campaigned on particular issues or anything along those lines. I don't think that would necessarily count against you, but I think it would be, there's a way of telling the story that demonstrates qualities that they're looking for. And that's the key thing, is that when you're in an interview, you might think that something's negative, but actually you've got to portray it in a way that it shows a skill set that they're looking for. And it's how you tell the story that's important.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Patrick.
Thank you, Trevor, for the presentation. Thank you, everyone. My question is about the CIC ordination certificate.
Yep.
When did it end? I know when you ordain, if someone has been ordained, why do CIC have to ordain the person? And when it's so, the certificate, is it mainly for the military entry requirement, or you can use it other in the world context?
Oh yeah, no, it's CIC's ordination is CIC's ordination, and that stands for all aspects of ministry. All. Okay. However, in CIC, we have two traditions that run side by side. So this is slightly different. So Paul, who's on the call and has served us a long time as both a reservist and a regular chaplain, originally from the Methodist Church. The Methodist Church, in order to go into ministry, you have to be ordained in order to carry out a whole load of things, because it's a bit more of a sacramental tradition. CIC has two things operating in a free church tradition, because we're facilitating a far wider group of people. So we have some people who theologically object to ordination, and we permit them to be accredited ministers in the free church non-ordaining tradition that dates back to the Reformation. Okay, so it's a long standing that you don't have to be ordained to carry it all out. It's a rebellion against bishop controls and all that kind of stuff. It's all deep-seated stuff within the UK. However, because of just how dominant the Anglican tradition is within the military, there has been a condition placed on us as the free churches, and CIC as one of those free churches, that our ministers going in will have been ordained. So if you have a massive theological objection to being ordained, you won't be able to progress. Okay, you're just going to have to learn how to find a way of compromising on that one. So for some people, they get around it by going, I basically object, but because I meet all the criteria, I will be ordained in order to meet the criteria, and I will learn a way of respecting those who have gone on an ordination journey. But that's going to be very rare in our situation, but it is a requirement that comes from the Tri-Forces heads of chaplaincy as a condition. So the chaplain of the fleet, the chaplain general, and the chaplain chief of the Air Force have required of the free churches. They're looking for something very similar within those who are from other world faiths, that they should be someone who can meet and show a demonstration that they have been formally recognized at a national/international level as someone who carries the level of competence, and ordination is a marker of that. So that's what they're trying to say. What's the box that we can put in that ticks that means that we get incompetent people? Unfortunately, we come from a slightly different angle, and it means that for us, we have to take people on a slightly different journey towards ordination, because we do all the work towards accredited minister status, and then ordination follows. which is the situation that you're in at the moment, Patrick.
Thank you. And
Does that help? You can only apply for ordination after you've been in accredited minister status for at least 1 year. So unless you're doing a denominational transfer, it's slightly different. But yeah, but that's very technical.
Sorry, last one.
Yeah.
Those who have passed through CIC and now they are operating or working in the military, they still have to be part of the CIC.
Oh yes, absolutely. You have to maintain your accreditation with CIC throughout. And if your accreditation lapses for some reason, and there are some that are just technical, if you don't pay your subs and your accreditation lapses, you will lose your commission with the King. It's that simple, because you're no longer accredited with your sending church. Therefore, your commission is at risk, and you will lose your job. So you have to maintain your accreditation. So you have to attend the annual review. You have to be at the annual members meeting in November. That's the online one. You have to pay your subs. You're expected to turn up at some of the ministers' gatherings. You're expected to be an engaged member as far as your operational obligations allow. Yeah, but there are times when the denomination can insist that you attend certain things, and your employing force is required to do that. So things like having denominational contact days where you can actually come to a minister's gathering with people who worship and pray the same way that you do. That's something that they have to facilitate, because that's part of your well-being and your maintaining your tradition and faith and so on. So some things are maintained structurally within the armed forces, and some things are your responsibility to be able to make sure they take place.
Thank you.
Okay. Good. Anyone else? No more questions? Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. It's been great to see you on the call. Annie, thank you so much for serving us and making it all happen. I'm just going to ask someone to close in prayer. Israel, would you close us in prayer?
Yeah, it would be my honour. Thank you.
The reason I ask him is because he's about to be ordained on Saturday, so he needs to step up to the plate.
Yeah, Heavenly Father, we thank you. Lord, we thank you for all that you give us, Lord. You give us life in all its fullness and life to abundance. And Lord, we as followers of you, followers of your Son, your Messiah, Lord, we want others to know you and to walk in communion with you, Lord. We want others to have this life to the full. And I just pray for each individual who's on this call who is either serving in a military sense already or is looking to serve in a military sense, Lord, that we would constantly be reflecting on our heart attitudes, Lord, and our motives. And I pray that our motives would constantly be pure, and that our desire to reach souls with the good news of Jesus Christ, and to be a light in the darkness and a witness for you would be a constant motivation. We thank you for Trevor and Annie and the team at CIC, Lord, for all that they're doing, getting chaplains into the military, people that are passionate about you and that love you, to witness to people in the forces, Lord. We thank you for them, and we pray you blessing upon them and upon the people in this call in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Israel.
Cheers.
Bless you. Thank you for everyone who's been able to contribute, and as on. So yeah, be blessed. If you have questions, you can ask them in the WhatsApp group. You can ask them to me directly. But Annie will send out the notes and the slides and stuff from this to everyone who's been on the call. Please don't send it to people who haven't been on the call. I think that would be inappropriate at this stage. I'd rather capture everyone who's actually been on the call. If people who haven't been able to come on the call have been in touch and given their apologies and asked for the notes and all the rest of it, then just run their names past me so that I know who's getting what. That would be really helpful.
Can I ask who is under the name M. Ush?
Yeah, Who is M. Osh?
Yeah, sorry, that's me, Emmanuel.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Emmanuel.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
Superb. Okay. Well, have a wonderful evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and we shall look forward to seeing you in another one. Would it be helpful to repeat this, do you think, at some point, or change its format, or feedback to me at some point? Okay. Yes,
Thanks,
Victor, I'll
Trevor.
sort that out.
Thanks, Annie.
Okay,
Thank
guys.
you.
Excellent. I think you can end that one there, Annie.
All right, Trevor. Have a good
Brilliant.
evening.
Thanks so much.
All right.
Do stay in touch, both of you. Thanks.
All right. Bye.
Okay. Bye.